This book explores the many dimensions of the inner self, the challenges associated with it, and their solutions as discovered through the self-analysis and deep introspection of Dr. Har Prashad. It presents the essence of resolving complex problems he encountered at crucial turning points in life and reflects how divine forces guided him through a solitary journey from childhood. These experiences led Dr. Har Prashad to realize that life is a continuum with discontinuities, where every aspect is part of a divine existence. Through inner stillness, the dissolution of the mind, and timeless awareness, he perceived the sacred force underlying all existence and expression. This book offers glimpses of the self within the self, revealing the principles of continuity and discontinuity through the pursuit of the pathless path of evolution.
We often believe our story begins the moment we are born. But what if our present existence is merely a continuation, shaped by the silent impressions of past lives and the hidden pull of a higher consciousness? Orphaned before the age of 3 amidst the fires of the 1947 partition, a young boy's world was reduced to ashes. 15 family members lost. No home. No wealth. Only a grandmother's fierce courage and an unseen, protective grace. This is not the tale of a born saint, but the honest journey of a soul wrestling with the same inner conflicts, loneliness, and worldly struggles we all face. Yet, through the heavy noise of survival, from poverty-stricken classrooms to international achievements, a quiet spiritual awakening was taking root. Guided by mysterious synchronicities, drawn to the profound stillness of sacred shrines and enlightened masters, every betrayal, every setback, and every heartbreak became a divine chisel. A quiet reminder that what is taken unjustly eventually fades, but what is built on truth becomes eternal. Discover how our deepest wounds become the very cracks through which the light of self-realization enters. A testament that no matter the darkness, an unseen force is silently guiding us through the uninterrupted continuum of life.
I have never considered myself a great scholar, philosopher, or extraordinary person. Yet, years ago, a deep inner calling inspired me to write about the true journey of my life. My purpose is not to glorify my experiences but to honestly share my inner conflicts, weaknesses, failures, and the lessons I learned through self-analysis, hoping they may help anyone seeking self-realization while fulfilling their worldly responsibilities. As I reflected on my life, I gradually realized that our present existence does not begin with this birth alone. The impressions of past lives, the hidden tendencies of the subconscious mind, and the silent guidance of divine consciousness continuously shape our thoughts, actions, and destiny. For many years, I remained unaware of this inner process. I lived with a constant conflict within myself. I was truthful, honest, and always willing to serve others, yet my mind was often trapped in negativity, criticism, and inner unrest. Despite my sincere efforts, I felt ignored, lonely, and discouraged, unable to understand why life unfolded the way it did. Then, an unexpected turning point shook my entire being. The dormant divine force within awakened me and transformed my way of thinking. Although nothing changed in the outer world, I had changed completely from within. This autobiography is the story of that transformation, the continuity of past life tendencies, the awakening of inner consciousness, and the silent grace of the Almighty. If my journey inspires even one person to discover their own true self, I will consider this work a blessing from the divine. My earliest memories are almost non-existent. I do not even remember the faces of my parents because my childhood was shattered by the tragedy of the 1947 partition. Within a few years of my birth, our prosperous joint family was destroyed, and 15 members lost their lives in the violence. I was born in the village of Garhi Habibullah, now in Pakistan. After 14 years of prayers, I was born as the only son of my parents. My grandmother often told me that my mother had prayed to goddess Vaishno Devi for a child, and believing me to be a divine blessing, my father named me Har Prashad, a gift from God. My father passed away before I was even 1 year old. Later, I learned that while he was under treatment, a greedy assistant doctor secretly replaced the prescribed medicine with distilled water injections for personal gain. By the time this deception was discovered, it was too late to save him. That painful incident taught my family the priceless value of education. My mother was a deeply religious woman who visited the temple and Gurudwara every morning. Our family followed both Hindu and Sikh traditions with equal devotion. Then came the horrors of partition. One morning, while she and other women were on their way to worship, they were attacked during the communal violence. To protect their dignity, many of them chose to jump into the nearby river, sacrificing their lives. In this heartbreaking way, I lost both of my parents before I was even 3 years old, and my life's difficult journey truly began. I was only 3 years old, yet a few horrifying images from the partition of 1947 remain deeply etched in my memory. I still remember the streets filled with fire, the looting, the brutal killings of innocent people, and the desperate cries all around. I watched homes being searched, valuables stolen, and buildings set ablaze. Our own home was destroyed, and most of my family lost their lives in that terrible violence. By what I can only call divine grace, and because my father had earned the respect of many people through his kindness, my grandmother and I were spared. Along with a few other children, we managed to escape and found shelter at a shrine. We had no food, no clothing, no money, and nowhere to live. A family that had once been prosperous had suddenly become refugees. My grandmother displayed remarkable courage. She sold the small amount of gold she had hidden and used it to start a tiny business, simply to feed us. Eventually, we reached India, lived in refugee camps, and were reunited with the surviving members of our family. From those painful beginnings, a new chapter of life slowly emerged. Among my earliest memories is another image that has never faded. When my father was seriously ill, I would quietly walk to the small temple inside our home, pray for his recovery, and then stand beside his bed. I repeated this every day with innocent faith. Looking back now, I feel that this natural devotion to the Almighty was not accidental. It was perhaps a continuation of impressions carried from before this birth, the first quiet awakening of the spiritual journey that would shape my entire life. After the partition, my childhood began in Dehradun, but it was far from ordinary. 5 of us lived in a single small room that served as our home, kitchen, and shelter. There was little cleanliness, almost no comfort, and no one to truly guide my education, welfare, or future. The surroundings offered more opportunities to learn unhealthy habits than good values. Yet, looking back, I feel that an unseen divine force quietly protected me. The outer environment influenced my life, but it never became a part of my inner nature. My eldest uncle opened a small grocery shop and supported the family, but he showed very little affection toward us. His harsh words often hurt my tender heart, and I would silently cry alone because there was no one with whom I could share my feelings. Even then, I never developed bitterness toward him. Instead, I understood that he had lost his wife and children during the partition, and I believed his pain had shaped his behavior. It amazes me that, even as a child, I seemed to view life with an unusual sense of maturity. My grandmother was a simple and generous woman. Despite our poverty, her faith in God and her habit of giving never disappeared. Today, when I reflect on those years, I feel that the compassion, understanding, and detachment within me were not newly acquired. They were perhaps the continuation of an inner consciousness that had been silently guiding my journey long before this life began. When I was about 6 years old, I was admitted to a modest municipal primary school. The school had very few facilities, no proper building, and we often sat on worn-out carpets. Yet, to me, it became a place of learning and hope. I never considered myself exceptionally intelligent, but I possessed an unusual dedication to study. Through hard work, I consistently earned the highest marks, served as the class monitor throughout my primary years, and received a merit scholarship that continued into my higher education. What amazes me most is that no one at home ever supervised my studies. No one checked whether I attended school or completed my homework. Looking back, I feel that an unseen divine force quietly guided me, keeping me focused on learning and protecting me from harmful influences. Without any external discipline, I remained committed to my education. When my teachers learned that I had lost my parents, they treated me with great kindness and encouragement. More than material comforts, it was the absence of parental love that I silently felt. Poor nutrition left me weak and forced me to wear spectacles at an early age, yet my determination never faded. I often studied lessons beyond my grade on my own, and people began to think I was exceptionally gifted. Deep within, however, I knew that my true strength was not extraordinary intelligence, but sincere effort and the quiet guidance of the divine that seemed to accompany me at every step. When I was in the 3rd and 4th grades, I often sat beside a gentle, innocent girl who was about my age and lived near my home. I would help her with her lessons and homework, and without even understanding the meaning of love, a quiet affection naturally grew within my heart. Whenever she was absent from school, I felt an unexpected emptiness, as though an important part of my day was missing. It was an emotion I could neither explain nor understand at that tender age. Sometimes, simply to catch a glimpse of her, I would walk past her house. Strangely, whenever I sincerely wished to see her, she would unexpectedly step outside. We would exchange a brief smile while pretending it was all a coincidence, and then continue on our separate ways. That single moment was enough to fill my heart with peace, happiness, and quiet contentment. I never gathered the courage to enter her home or ask about her when she was absent for several days. As the years passed, we completed primary school, our paths separated, and life carried us in different directions. Yet even today, after so many decades, the gentle fragrance of that innocent affection still lingers in a quiet corner of my heart. I feel that some relationships are not mere coincidences. They may be subtle reminders of the soul's continuing journey, where unseen bonds from the past quietly reappear, only to touch our lives for a brief but meaningful moment before fading into memory. When I was in the 4th grade of primary school, an incident occurred that has remained deeply engraved in my memory throughout my life. Our class teacher was extremely harsh, unsympathetic, and cruel toward his students. Instead of teaching with patience, he often insulted and physically punished children. As the class monitor, I not only suffered myself but also felt deeply hurt watching my classmates endure such treatment. From the depths of my heart, I repeatedly prayed to God for relief. My only wish was that this teacher would be transferred or that our class would somehow come under a different teacher. One day, a few classmates and I approached the teacher of another 4th grade section, who was known for his kindness and dedication. We explained our difficulties and requested him to take charge of our class. Although he sympathized with us, he gently explained that only the headmaster had the authority to make such a change, and even that seemed unlikely. We returned disappointed, realizing that nothing more could be done. Left with no other option, I sincerely surrendered my wish to the divine. To my great surprise, just 3 days later, I arrived at school and learned that our class teacher had passed away the previous night. I was deeply shocked and saddened. I had never wished for his death, I had only prayed to be freed from his harshness. This incident left a lasting impression on my subconscious and became my first profound experience of the mysterious power of sincere prayer. Since then, I have believed that when a heartfelt wish arises with complete sincerity, the divine may respond through natural yet unimaginable ways, fulfilling the prayer in a manner far beyond human understanding. As a child, I knew nothing about meditation, deep concentration, or spiritual absorption. No one had taught me these practices, nor did I have any opportunity to learn them. Yet, as I look back today, I realize that a natural ability to become deeply absorbed in the divine already existed within me. I believe these were impressions carried from previous lives, quietly continuing into this one. Every morning, our primary school held a prayer assembly, and I was chosen as one of the 5 students who led the prayers. One day, while chanting with my eyes closed, I became so deeply immersed that I lost all awareness of my surroundings. At that moment, my uncle came to collect the key to his shop from my pocket. He called my name several times, but I heard nothing. Instead of disturbing me, he silently waited until the prayers ended. When I finally opened my eyes, I saw teachers and many others watching the scene. From that day onward, I noticed a quiet change in the way people treated me, as though they had witnessed something beyond ordinary concentration. Before going to school, I would often visit the Gurudwara on my own and sit there listening to the hymns. I understood none of the words, yet I felt deeply drawn to that peaceful atmosphere. No one had asked me to go there. It was simply an inner calling. Today, I feel that the silent presence of the divine had been guiding me since childhood, shaping my journey through unseen grace at every step. After returning from school, I spent most of my afternoons sitting on a gunny sack in front of my uncle's shop, completing my studies and homework. Like any child, I wished to play games, learn music, and enjoy a carefree childhood, but my circumstances offered none of those opportunities. Watching people pass by on the street became my only form of recreation. Even so, I never blamed my uncle. He supported me in the only way he knew, and I understood the hardships he had endured. During the hot summer days, another boy of my age would sit nearby in front of his father's shop. At the same time, a saint with a radiant and peaceful face would regularly come and sit under the same shelter. He rarely spoke, but one day he looked deeply into my eyes and said, "You will receive a high education, become well respected, and be blessed with great divine grace." Then he turned to the other boy and said that his life would remain unsettled and that he would not receive much education. After those few words, the saint disappeared and never returned. Many years later, after I had become established in my professional life, I saw that same boy selling ice cream at a bus stand. In that moment, the saint's prediction came back to me with striking clarity. My heart filled with gratitude toward the Almighty. I had become an orphan before the age of 3, yet divine grace had quietly carried me through every hardship. Experiences like these strengthened my faith, deepened my humility, and convinced me that an unseen divine plan was always guiding my life. During my childhood, I often studied in front of my uncle's shop, where a wandering fakir would occasionally sit for hours. People visited him to seek lucky gambling numbers, but I never felt drawn towards such activities. One day, while a man was asking the fakir for a number, an entirely different number arose spontaneously within me, and I casually spoke it aloud. I attached no importance to those words and soon forgot about the incident. The very next day, the same man returned and treated me with unusual respect. He told me that the number I had spoken had proved correct and had brought him good fortune. Similar incidents happened once or twice more, and before long, people, including the fakir himself, began asking me for predictions. I felt deeply uncomfortable with this attention and quietly stopped spending time there, knowing that I did not want my life to become connected with such pursuits. Sometime later, another unexpected incident occurred. Without any intention, I told a man that he would fall ill. Nearly a year later, he met me again and reminded me that my words had come true. Hearing this filled me with deep regret. From that day onward, I made a firm decision that I would speak only words of hope and positivity, never anything negative, even if such thoughts arose unintentionally. Looking back, I feel that when the mind becomes completely still, even unknowingly, deeper consciousness may briefly reveal itself. Yet such grace should always be expressed with compassion, responsibility, and goodwill. During the hot summer afternoons, I often spent my time at Gurudwara Sri Guru Ram Rai Ji, where the peaceful atmosphere and cool marble floors brought me deep comfort. Gradually, the priests and elderly devotees encouraged me to recite the Bhagavad Gita every day. I would read the verses with complete devotion. Although I could not fully understand the deeper meaning of the Sanskrit verses at that age, the explanations touched my heart and inspired me. People listened with affection, offered me prasad, and slowly began to show me great love and respect. Looking back, I feel that those simple moments planted a lifelong devotion to the Bhagavad Gita within me. As I grew older, I studied its interpretations by many scholars, and those early impressions eventually inspired my own spiritual writings. I now see all of this as the quiet blessing of the divine, guiding my journey from childhood. At times, I also played there with boys of my age. However, I gradually became uncomfortable with their behavior, speech, and habits. Without anyone forcing me, I naturally distanced myself from their company. Years later, I noticed that most of them had made little progress in their lives. This strengthened my faith that an unseen divine force had repeatedly protected me from harmful influences. Today, I believe that while the physical body passes away, the impressions of our actions and the journey of the soul continue, quietly shaping the course of every new life. During my visits to the Gurudwara, I came across a middle-aged man who gradually tried to become very close to me. He offered me small gifts, brought me food, and looked for every opportunity to spend time with me. At first, I was too young and innocent to understand his intentions. But after observing his behavior for a few days, and noticing that he acted similarly with other young boys, I realized something was wrong. I quietly began avoiding him, and one day I firmly drove him away. Looking back, I feel that the unseen grace of the divine protected me from a serious danger that I could not have understood at that age. As I grew older, I also realized that many people tried to take advantage of my innocence by making me do small tasks for them. Gradually, I learned to understand people more clearly, yet I never allowed bitterness or hatred to take root in my heart. Within the Gurudwara, there was a small marble cave that became my refuge. Whenever I felt lonely or burdened, I would sit there in silence, remember God, and sometimes even weep during my prayers. That quiet place filled my heart with peace and became an important part of my childhood. Even later, I continued attending the evening prayers whenever possible. Today, I feel that no human being placed me on the spiritual path. It was the silent presence of the Almighty that guided, protected, and shaped my life from the very beginning, as though my spiritual journey had simply continued from where it had once paused. One day, while playing in the Gurudwara, I experienced one of the most mysterious moments of my childhood. Standing beneath the shade of a large tree, I found myself gazing fixedly at a single point without blinking. Gradually, my body became still, and I collapsed to the ground, losing consciousness for a short time. When I regained awareness, I stood up as though nothing had happened. The people around me had witnessed the incident, yet no one questioned me. A few days later, a woman who had seen it told me that it was not an ordinary fainting spell but something unusual. At that age, I could not understand her words, but the experience remained deeply etched in my memory. After that day, I noticed profound changes within myself. I felt naturally drawn toward remembering God, chanting sacred words, and contemplating spiritual ideas. At the same time, many unfamiliar thoughts arose within me, far beyond my age, which I simply observed without suppressing them. Years later, I came to believe that some deep spiritual process had awakened within me unexpectedly, long before I was mature enough to understand it. During those years, I had no one with whom I could share these inner experiences. I often felt as though I was searching for light in complete darkness. Yet, through every inner conflict, I sensed that an unseen divine presence was protecting and guiding me. In the end, it was always that inner spiritual force which prevailed and quietly shaped the direction of my life. Looking back, I feel that those simple moments planted a lifelong devotion to the Bhagavad Gita within me. As I grew older, I studied its interpretations by many scholars, and those early impressions eventually inspired my own spiritual writings. I now see all of this as the quiet blessing of the divine, guiding my journey from childhood. At times, I also played there with boys of my age. However, I gradually became uncomfortable with their behavior, speech, and habits. Without anyone forcing me, I naturally distanced myself from their company. Years later, I noticed that most of them had made little progress in their lives. This strengthened my faith that an unseen divine force had repeatedly protected me from harmful influences. Today, I believe that while the physical body passes away, the impressions of our actions and the journey of the soul continue, quietly shaping the course of every new life. During my visits to the Gurudwara, I came across a middle-aged man who gradually tried to become very close to me. He offered me small gifts, brought me food, and looked for every opportunity to spend time with me. At first, I was too young and innocent to understand his intentions. But after observing his behavior for a few days, and noticing that he acted similarly with other young boys, I realized something was wrong. I quietly began avoiding him, and one day I firmly drove him away. Looking back, I feel that the unseen grace of the divine protected me from a serious danger that I could not have understood at that age. As I grew older, I also realized that many people tried to take advantage of my innocence by making me do small tasks for them. Gradually, I learned to understand people more clearly, yet I never allowed bitterness or hatred to take root in my heart. Within the Gurudwara, there was a small marble cave that became my refuge. Whenever I felt lonely or burdened, I would sit there in silence, remember God, and sometimes even weep during my prayers. That quiet place filled my heart with peace and became an important part of my childhood. Even later, I continued attending the evening prayers whenever possible. Today, I feel that no human being placed me on the spiritual path. It was the silent presence of the Almighty that guided, protected, and shaped my life from the very beginning, as though my spiritual journey had simply continued from where it had once paused. One day, while playing in the Gurudwara, I experienced one of the most mysterious moments of my childhood. Standing beneath the shade of a large tree, I found myself gazing fixedly at a single point without blinking. Gradually, my body became still, and I collapsed to the ground, losing consciousness for a short time. When I regained awareness, I stood up as though nothing had happened. The people around me had witnessed the incident, yet no one questioned me. A few days later, a woman who had seen it told me that it was not an ordinary fainting spell but something unusual. At that age, I could not understand her words, but the experience remained deeply etched in my memory. After that day, I noticed profound changes within myself. I felt naturally drawn toward remembering God, chanting sacred words, and contemplating spiritual ideas. At the same time, many unfamiliar thoughts arose within me, far beyond my age, which I simply observed without suppressing them. Years later, I came to believe that some deep spiritual process had awakened within me unexpectedly, long before I was mature enough to understand it. During those years, I had no one with whom I could share these inner experiences. I often felt as though I was searching for light in complete darkness. Yet, through every inner conflict, I sensed that an unseen divine presence was protecting and guiding me. In the end, it was always that inner spiritual force which prevailed and quietly shaped the direction of my life. One day, while playing with other boys at the Gurudwara, I became upset over a small misunderstanding. Instead of arguing, I quietly stood still and fixed my gaze on a single object. As the moments passed, tears began to flow from my eyes, and I seemed to drift into a state completely detached from the world around me. I returned to normal awareness only when a woman devotee gently warned me not to stare continuously, saying it could affect my eyesight. At that age, I could not understand what had happened, but the experience remained deeply impressed upon my mind. Many years later, through self-reflection, I came to feel that this had been a natural state of deep concentration that arose within me without any conscious effort. Whenever I felt helpless or unable to respond to life's situations, my mind seemed to withdraw inward on its own, bringing me unexpected peace and inner strength. As time passed, I began to feel that these spiritual tendencies were not newly acquired but were perhaps impressions carried from an earlier existence. No one taught me this path, yet nature and the silent grace of the divine continued to guide me from within. Perhaps that is why I was naturally gentle, compassionate, and deeply sensitive to the feelings of others. Although the absence of love sometimes made me emotionally restless, it was always my inner spiritual inclination that quietly led me forward and shaped the course of my life. By the time I was around 10 years old, I had developed a strong desire to learn. I taught myself Punjabi, although many other interests remained beyond my reach because of limited resources. I longed to dress well like other children, but even simple clothing was difficult to afford. At times, the way people treated me because of my poverty deeply hurt my heart. Instead of complaining, however, I gradually learned to accept my circumstances and become stronger within. One day, I joined a group of boys to steal fruit from a nearby tree. The first attempt went unnoticed, but the second time I was caught by the owner of the house and slapped for stealing while the others escaped. I returned home deeply ashamed, cried alone, and made a firm promise to myself that I would never steal again or follow such company. Not long afterward, I fell seriously ill with chickenpox. My mother's sister, despite facing severe financial hardship herself, came to care for me. Her gentle touch, affection, and motherly love brought me immense comfort, and I recovered surprisingly quickly. Later, when I visited her home, she secretly gave me sweets, embraced me with tears in her eyes, and remembered my late mother. For the first time in my life, I truly experienced the healing power of unconditional love. That moment taught me that genuine affection can restore the human heart more deeply than material wealth, and its influence continues to shape lives long after the moment itself has passed. After completing primary school, I entered intermediate college with a fee waiver and merit scholarships. As I grew older, I began to understand people, their behavior, and my own inner nature more deeply. During these years, my eyesight gradually weakened, and I had to wear spectacles at a very young age. Although I disliked them, they became essential for my studies. I never considered myself exceptionally intelligent, I simply believed in sincere hard work. My notebooks were admired by my teachers and often shown as examples to other students. I performed with distinction in my board examinations, earned national and state merit scholarships, and even had my name engraved on my school's merit board. Looking back, I see these achievements not as my own greatness but as blessings bestowed by God. To support myself, I began tutoring younger students, which made me financially independent while I was still in school. I received respect from many people, yet the warmth and affection I longed for at home remained largely absent. That emotional emptiness made me more inward and sensitive. During this period, I developed a deep love for Hindi literature and poetry. Whenever I wrote, I became so absorbed that I completely lost awareness of time. Later, I felt that those words were not merely my own but expressions flowing through me from a deeper divine source. My school years taught me that true success was not only academic achievement, but recognizing the silent guidance of God shaping my life from within. During my school years, I achieved excellent results through hard work and sincerity. I never believed I was a genius, yet I carried a simple dream, to make my life truly meaningful. As a child, I admired great leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru without fully understanding the depth of their achievements. Over time, that dream evolved into a desire to become a great scientist. I immersed myself in books about scientists and inventors, while an equally strong longing for inner spiritual growth quietly developed within me. After high school, I faced one of the most difficult decisions of my life. My uncle wanted me to stop studying, join his business, and settle into a conventional life. His advice reflected his own experiences and values, but my heart was firmly set on continuing my education. I respectfully but firmly refused. Although I knew my decision deeply hurt him, it also caused me great inner pain because I genuinely respected everything he had done for me. Looking back, I realized that ignoring the voice of my own conscience would have left me with lifelong regret. Choosing my path may have disappointed my uncle, but it preserved my inner peace. Today, I feel that this turning point was part of a greater divine plan. Through that difficult choice, I was guided toward the life I was meant to live, a life where external struggles became the means for both intellectual achievement and inner spiritual evolution. During my school years, I briefly developed a few habits that I now see as temporary deviations in my character. Influenced by my classmates, I sometimes became careless about keeping my promises and responsibilities. On one occasion, I organized a school picnic but, without any valid reason, failed to show up on the appointed day. My teacher and classmates waited for me before leaving without me. The following day, my teacher did not scold me. He simply looked at me in silence, and that single glance filled me with deep shame. I returned home, reflected on my behavior, and firmly resolved that I would never again treat my word or responsibilities so lightly. Some time later, I was elected secretary of the Science Association. The recognition quietly inflated my ego. During a meeting, I corrected a teacher's mistake, but I did so in an unnecessarily blunt manner. Afterwards, he gently explained that although I was factually correct, truth should always be expressed with humility and respect. That lesson remained with me throughout my life. Around the same period, another teacher was known for using harsh and inappropriate language with students. Gathering my courage, I respectfully suggested that he improve the way he spoke. He said nothing at the time, yet from the very next day, his language became noticeably gentler. That experience taught me that when words arise from sincere intentions and a desire for good, they often bring positive change in ways we do not immediately expect. A few years later, my uncle moved into his own house, and I was given a small room of my own. That simple room became a place for study, prayer, and quiet reflection. I built a small shrine there, and every morning before going to school, I visited the nearby Gurudwara to seek God's blessings. In the evenings, I regularly attended the temple aarti. Gradually, my youthful impatience faded, and my mind became more deeply focused on learning and spiritual growth. I had made a firm decision not to waste my life. Whatever I studied, I wanted to remember completely. Even while walking to fetch milk for the house, I would silently revise my lessons in my mind. This simple habit strengthened my memory and naturally trained my mind to remain focused instead of wandering aimlessly. It became a powerful support not only in my studies but also in remembering God with greater concentration. Life at home was often emotionally difficult, yet instead of reacting, I gradually learned to keep my mind calm and detached. At times, it felt as though my mind simply withdrew from unpleasant situations, allowing me to remain inwardly peaceful. Years later, when I studied spiritual science, I realized that this was a natural form of mental discipline described in yoga. I never felt that I had consciously learned this ability, rather, it seemed to arise from deep inner impressions, quietly nurtured by the silent grace and guidance of the divine throughout my life. After passing my intermediate examination in 1962 with a high rank in the Agra board, I was awarded a merit scholarship and received recognition for my academic performance. Although it was a proud moment, I quietly kept my happiness to myself. I was elected vice president of the college student union and actively participated in school and college events. Public speaking never frightened me, and I especially enjoyed reciting poetry on stage. Whether in educational programs or religious gatherings at shrines and gurudwaras, my recitations were appreciated, and I was honored with several awards. The principal and vice principal always encouraged me, which strengthened my confidence. Despite my academic success, drawing and art remained my weakest subjects. Because of this, I never developed an interest in botany or zoology and struggled whenever artistic skills were required. After completing my Bachelor of Science degree, my dream was to become a scientist. I joined the integrated M.Sc program in physics, securing admission to one of the few available seats. However, after a year, I realized that memorizing vast amounts of material without deep understanding did not suit my nature. I decided to leave the course and join the prestigious Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, to pursue mechanical engineering. Soon afterward, another unexpected opportunity changed the direction of my life. I was selected by the Ministry of Education for fully funded higher studies in the Soviet Union. Leaving India in 1965 for Moscow was a turning point that opened an entirely new chapter in my journey, filled with experiences that would shape both my life and my spiritual outlook. During a bus journey from Delhi to Dehradun, I experienced a meeting that left a lasting impression on my heart. A graceful, middle-aged lady took the seat beside me after the bus had almost filled. At first, we exchanged very few words, but as the journey continued, I helped her with a few small things along the way. Gradually, our conversation became warm and heartfelt, and within a few hours, it felt as though we had known each other for a long time. Moved by an unexpected feeling of affection, I told her that I wished to share a meaningful bond with her. Smiling gently, she replied that she was too old to be my sister. I then innocently asked if I could call her mother. She spoke no words, yet the kindness and tenderness in her eyes gave me the answer my heart longed for. For the first time in many years, I felt the warmth of a mother's love. We remained in touch through letters, and before leaving Dehradun, she sent me one final message. She wrote, "Do whatever you believe is right with all your sincerity and strength, then leave the rest in God's hands." This has been the key to my life, and today I pass it on to you. I treasured that letter throughout my student life and have preserved it ever since. Those simple words became my lifelong guide. Looking back, I feel that through her, the Divine silently gave me the wisdom and encouragement I needed at the right moment in my journey. From my childhood, I lived with very limited means, yet God never allowed the spirit of giving to fade from my heart. One day, my mother's eldest sister came to meet me at my school with her daughter. I was surprised, as no one had ever visited me like that before. After embracing me with affection, she hesitantly shared her financial difficulties and asked if I could help her. I was only a school student, surviving on scholarships and a small amount of savings, but the very next day I happily gave her almost everything I had. She promised to return the money, but because of her circumstances, she never could. I never regretted it. Instead, I felt deeply grateful that despite being an orphan with so little, God had still given me enough to become a source of support for someone else. Similar moments appeared many times later in my life. On one occasion, my elder cousin, who was studying engineering, urgently asked me for financial help. I gathered all the resources I could and sent him the money. Even after he became financially successful, he never returned it. Yet I never held any bitterness in my heart. These experiences taught me that true joy lies not in receiving, but in giving. God endlessly gives to every living being without expecting anything in return. Inspired by that divine example, I gradually realized that selfless service and generosity are among the greatest spiritual treasures a person can cultivate, and they filled my heart with lasting peace and inner strength. Receiving a government scholarship to pursue a 5-year master's program in power engineering in the Soviet Union was one of the greatest turning points of my life. At that time, going abroad for higher studies was considered an extraordinary achievement, especially for an orphan with limited financial support. My relatives, friends, and well-wishers came to congratulate me, and I felt nothing but deep gratitude to Almighty for His blessings. As I prepared for my journey, I bought my first suits and other necessities with the help of a close friend. My uncle, however, wished that I would stay in India, marry, and eventually support his family and business. Although he accepted my decision with a heavy heart, he blessed me sincerely. Later, I learned that throughout my 5 years abroad, he arranged daily prayers at a nearby shrine for my safety and success. That silent act of love touched me more deeply than words ever could. My departure was not without obstacles. Visa delays, an extended wait in Delhi, emotional hurt from feeling unwelcome, a taxi breakdown on the way to the airport, and even an administrative mistake before boarding tested my patience. Each time, I silently prayed, and somehow every difficulty was resolved at the last moment. When I finally landed in Moscow after my first flight, I sensed that my journey ahead would not be easy. Yet I carried no bitterness or pride within me. I believed that sincere prayer connected me with the divine, giving me the strength to face every challenge. Looking back, I see those struggles as temporary interruptions in the continuous flow of God's grace. While working as a daily wage laborer in Berlin without an official work permit, I experienced a lesson that stayed with me for life. One day, my employer mistakenly paid me in the morning and then tried to pay me again in the evening. Some workers quietly accepted the second payment and left without saying a word. When my turn came, I respectfully told him that I had already received my wages earlier that day. He looked at me with surprise and immediately realized his mistake. The following morning, he dismissed the other workers but asked me alone to continue working. That simple act of honesty earned me something far greater than extra money. It earned me his trust and respect. I realized that integrity always creates opportunities that dishonesty can never sustain. These experiences taught me that, regardless of culture or nationality, people value honesty, respect, and genuine human connection. Patience, humility, and kindness always return to us in unexpected and beautiful ways. When I returned to Dehradun after my years in Moscow, one of my deepest wishes was to see my grandmother. Meeting her filled my heart with both joy and sorrow. Before I had left for Russia, she had been active, independent, and devoted to her daily prayers. But now Aage had taken its toll. She had almost lost her awareness, could neither see nor hear properly, and was living in a fragile state. Yet, the moment I went near her, something remarkable happened. She sensed my presence. With great affection, she said that her beloved grandson had returned and that now she could leave this world in peace. She embraced and kissed me for a long time. In that silent moment, I experienced the purest form of unconditional love, a love that touched the deepest part of my heart. My relatives told me that for the past several weeks she had been waiting only for my return. Her final wish was that I should perform her last rites. I stayed with her for a week, serving her with love and gratitude, knowing that every moment with her was precious. When duty called me to Delhi, I felt an unexplained inner feeling that her final moments were near. I ignored that intuition because I had no choice. The very next morning, I received the news of her passing. By God's grace, I reached just before the cremation. As she had wished, I lit her funeral pyre. Fulfilling her last desire brought me deep peace, and with her departure, I felt that an entire generation of my family had quietly come to an end. The 3 years I spent in Bokaro gave me valuable experience with heavy machinery and industrial operations, yet my heart always longed for research and creative work. When Bharat Heavy Electricals advertised scientific positions in its research and development division at Hyderabad, I applied, was selected, and began a new phase of my professional life. Around the same time, after 3 years of marriage, my wife became pregnant. During a medical examination, a specialist told me that her pregnancy itself was a miracle of nature because of her physical condition, and that a normal delivery would not be possible. Only then did I learn about the severe spinal injury she had suffered in childhood, a truth that had been kept from me before our marriage. The revelation deeply hurt me, but I never blamed my wife. I accepted everything as the will of God and moved forward without bitterness. The delivery proved to be extremely difficult. Initial negligence at the government hospital placed her life in danger, but an emergency cesarean section was finally performed in time. My daughter was born safely, and the doctors admired her extraordinary beauty and radiant presence. The moment I held her in my arms, my heart overflowed with gratitude. I named her Shweta, meaning grace, light, and purity. That experience strengthened my faith forever. I realized that sincere prayer, acceptance, and trust in the divine can carry us through even the darkest moments. Looking back, I still believe that the safe birth of my daughter and the survival of her mother were nothing less than manifestations of God's grace, gently transforming life's greatest discontinuities into a blessed continuum. As I grew older, I found myself surrounded by boys with aggressive and short-tempered personalities. Gradually, their influence began to affect me as well. I started losing my patience over small matters and reacted impulsively, just as many of them did. One day, this change in my behavior led to a painful incident. Although I was not truly at fault, a quarrel broke out with a group of boys from another community. The situation quickly turned physical, and during the struggle my shoulder was dislocated. That injury did not end with that single day. The same shoulder slipped out several times later in life, permanently limiting my ability to participate in many sports. After the incident, I spent days reflecting on my own actions. Instead of blaming others, I questioned myself and realized how costly a single moment of impatience could become. With time, the boys who had fought with me understood their mistake, apologized sincerely, and eventually even became my friends. Years later, when I learned about the hardships they themselves had faced in life, I felt no resentment, only compassion. This experience became a turning point for me. I understood that the company we keep has a profound influence on our character. More importantly, I realized that life's painful experiences are not always punishments. They can also be divine lessons. Just as a loving mother sometimes gives bitter medicine for her child's well-being, God may use difficult situations to guide us toward a better path. From then on, I accepted every hardship as an opportunity for inner growth and spiritual refinement. From my childhood, my heart was naturally drawn toward God, temples, and sacred places. After deeply studying spiritual literature, I developed a strong desire to visit the great pilgrimage sites of India. At the first opportunity, I quietly set out alone for the Himalayas. At Joshimath, I visited the place where Adi Shankaracharya is believed to have performed his penance. As I closed my eyes in prayer beneath that sacred spot, I felt myself entering a completely different state of consciousness. For the first time in my life, I experienced an extraordinary inner awakening, as though a powerful spiritual energy had risen within me, leaving me absorbed in a profound meditative state for a few precious moments. Years later, when I returned to the same place, I experienced the same divine state once again. In 1978, I reached Badrinath on the sacred occasion of Janmashtami. I deeply wished to stay there overnight, and unexpectedly, heavy rainfall delayed our journey, allowing my wish to be fulfilled. From there, I continued to Hemkund Sahib through the Valley of Flowers. Bathing in the icy waters of the sacred lake, I felt an overwhelming sense of divine grace and remembered the spiritual legacy of Guru Gobind Singh with deep reverence. The return journey was filled with challenges as landslides blocked the mountain roads. We spent a night in the forest, where I had the opportunity to serve many elderly pilgrims. Despite dangerous conditions, I eventually found my way home safely. This entire pilgrimage strengthened my faith that God's unseen guidance had accompanied me throughout the journey, making it one of the most profound spiritual experiences of my life. The writings and spiritual life of Vinoba Bhave had deeply inspired me, so I decided to visit his ashram in Wardha with a close friend who also shared a deep interest in spirituality. Vinobaji was still alive at that time, and meeting him felt like receiving a priceless blessing. Though our interaction was brief, I was profoundly moved by his simplicity, silence, love for nature, and spiritual wisdom. The entire ashram functioned in complete self-reliance. Food, milk, fruits, and vegetables were produced within the campus. The day began before dawn with prayer, meditation, and physical work. Everyone performed their assigned duties, living a disciplined life in harmony with nature. The peaceful atmosphere strengthened my own resolve to live simply, reduce unnecessary desires, and dedicate my experiences and reflections to meaningful writing. Afterward, I visited Mahatma Gandhi's Sevagram ashram. There I met elderly people who had spent many years living and working closely with Gandhiji. As they shared their memories, their eyes filled with tears, revealing the depth of their love and respect for him. Their honesty, discipline, simplicity, and commitment to self-reliance deeply touched my heart. I realized that truly great souls inspire not only through their words but through every aspect of their daily lives. When I left Wardha, I carried with me a renewed sense of purpose. I felt that the values of simplicity, service, and spirituality had always existed within me, and this journey had merely awakened those dormant qualities once again. My professional life gave me the opportunity to travel across India, but for me, every journey was much more than an official assignment. I always believed that work was essential for earning a livelihood, yet the true purpose of my life was self-realization and the search for the divine. Wherever I traveled, I made it a point to visit nearby sacred places, even if it meant taking leave from work. I never wanted to miss an opportunity to deepen my spiritual journey. By the grace of God, I was blessed to visit almost all the Jyotirlingas, the great temples of South India, Tirupati, the Golden Temple, Vaishno Devi, the Shakti temples of Himachal, the sacred shrines of Eastern India, Gurudwaras and monasteries in Ladakh, as well as Hindu temples in Sri Lanka. I also spent peaceful days at Belur Math, Raman Maharshi Ashram, and Sri Aurobindo Ashram. Every sacred place carried a unique spiritual vibration that filled my heart with devotion, peace, and gratitude. At the end of one long pilgrimage, I arranged a meal for all my fellow pilgrims. When they asked why, I explained that it was not for a birthday or any personal celebration. It was simply my humble offering of gratitude to God for allowing me to complete the pilgrimage safely. Serving His devotees felt like the purest form of worship. My journey was never limited to one faith. I also visited mosques, churches, dargahs, and places of worship belonging to many religions. These experiences strengthened my conviction that, at their core, all religions lead to the same divine truth, a realization that later became the foundation of my spiritual writings and my way of life. Many years ago, I read Autobiography of a Yogi, and the description of Mahavtar Babaji's cave in the Himalayas awakened a deep longing within me. Although decades passed without an opportunity to visit, the desire never left my heart. Finally, in 2009, with only limited information, I traveled to Nainital and Almora in search of the cave. I asked many local people, but very few even knew about Babaji. Just when I was about to give up hope, an elderly temple priest and another local devotee pointed me toward the correct location. The next day, something remarkable happened. My taxi driver insisted on accompanying me without charging any fare. He said that if someone had come from so far away with such devotion, he too wished to become a pilgrim rather than just a driver. After reaching the foothills, we continued on foot. Along the way, two dogs unexpectedly appeared and walked ahead as if guiding us. Later, two village children came with wooden sticks, helped us climb the steep mountain, and safely led us to the cave. As I entered the small cave where Mahavtar Babaji is believed to have meditated, an indescribable peace filled my heart. Sitting there in silence, I offered my deepest gratitude and felt blessed by the sacred spiritual presence surrounding that place. On our return, I thanked the children with a small gift, yet inwardly I felt that Babaji himself had guided us through those humble forms. That pilgrimage strengthened my conviction that this journey was not a coincidence but the continuation of a deep spiritual connection carried across lifetimes. In my office, I kept photographs of Mahavtar Babaji, Paramahansa Yogananda, Sri Yukteswar, and Lahiri Mahashaya. Their presence helped me maintain mental concentration, inner peace, and spiritual strength, especially during stressful moments. Since my research work often allowed me to work in solitude, I gradually learned to enjoy being alone without ever feeling lonely. One day, a colleague noticed these photographs and told me that his own guru was also a follower of Babaji. After some time, I accepted his invitation and visited the Guru. He was a retired householder who devoted his days to spiritual practice and guiding seekers. I was deeply impressed by the depth of his spiritual knowledge. I purchased several of his books, discussed many profound subjects with him, and carefully recorded the answers he gave to my questions. For more than 3 years, I met him regularly. Our discussions became a valuable source of learning, and over time a few other seekers also joined us. Eventually, misunderstandings among some visitors caused those gatherings to fade away, but my respect for his knowledge remained unchanged. The insights I gained from him, combined with my own spiritual experiences, later became the foundation of a book that was published by a reputed international publisher. In 2011, he tragically lost his life in a sudden accident. His passing reminded me that even a person blessed with profound spiritual wisdom may still encounter life's unexplained trials. Such experiences strengthened my understanding that every life carries both spiritual progress and unfinished lessons along its journey. A few years after my uncle's passing, my aunt also left this world. When I went to pay my respects, her registered will was read aloud. It declared that all her property had been transferred to my cousin's sons. Although I had a legal claim, I was advised that challenging the registered will would be almost impossible. My well-wishers tried to mediate, but I returned with nothing. Feeling deeply saddened, I went to Haridwar and took a holy dip in the Ganges to find peace within. There, something extraordinary happened. As a radiant saint emerged from the river, he stopped beside me and said, "Do not grieve. The wealth taken from you was not earned through righteous means. It is better that it never came into your hands. God has already planned another path of abundance for you." After saying these words, he quietly departed. His message instantly lifted the burden from my heart and filled me with unexpected peace. Not long afterward, I had the opportunity to purchase a piece of land at a very low price, which later brought me remarkable financial gain. Meanwhile, the wealth over which so much injustice had occurred gradually disappeared through theft, business losses, and family disputes. Even then, I chose not to hold bitterness. Instead, I maintained respect for my cousin's family and supported them whenever I could. This experience strengthened my faith that divine justice works in ways beyond human understanding. Wealth earned through truth and righteousness alone endures, while everything gained through unfair means eventually fades away. My uncle had transferred a small house to my name as part of the compensation received after the partition of India. During my student years, I lived there while pursuing my education. Later, after moving away for work, I rented the house. When the tenant passed away, I allowed his widow to continue living there for many years without increasing the rent so that she could raise her children with dignity. As time passed, however, her family's attitude changed. Taking advantage of my long absence, they built an additional floor without my permission and later tried to buy the property for a fraction of its true value. Although I felt deeply hurt, I chose not to react with anger. During my daily prayers at a nearby Ganpati temple, an unexpected thought arose within me. Instead of surrendering the house to injustice, I decided that I would donate it to the temple if necessary. That decision brought me great inner peace, for I felt it honored both my ancestors and my conscience. I informed the temple management of my intention and then shared my decision with the tenant. The moment she realized the consequences, her attitude changed completely. She admitted her mistake, sought my forgiveness, and arranged to pay the full market value along with the pending rent. After the transaction was completed, I donated a portion of the amount to the temple with gratitude. This experience taught me that when the mind remains calm and rooted in righteousness, divine guidance appears in unexpected ways. Temporary injustice may arise, but truth ultimately finds its own path to victory. As I look back on my entire life, I can clearly see that nothing happens by chance. Every event, every relationship, every joy, and every hardship is connected through an invisible and mysterious order. This realization gradually convinced me that life is a continuous flow, while the obstacles we encounter are only temporary discontinuities within that greater continuum. I have learned that very little is truly under human control. We are free to choose our actions, our efforts, and our attitude, but the outcomes unfold according to a much larger divine design. The difficulties that appear in life are not merely obstacles, they are opportunities that awaken the hidden strength, wisdom, and virtues already present within us. Instead of resisting them, I learned to accept them with patience, knowing that their purpose reveals itself with time. My experience has also taught me that every individual is born with inherent tendencies and qualities. Through sincere effort, righteous actions, and deep self-reflection, these qualities can blossom. When the mind becomes perfectly concentrated and falls into complete silence, thoughts dissolve, the sense of time disappears, and one briefly touches the infinite divine consciousness. From that timeless state come immense peace, inner strength, and true guidance. Today my faith is stronger than ever that an unseen universal force silently governs the mysteries of life. No one can predict the future, but everyone can choose to perform noble actions, for ultimately we reap only what we sow. This is the essence of my life's journey, to keep moving forward with faith, to embrace every experience with gratitude, and to trust that the divine is always guiding us through the uninterrupted continuum of life. Dr. Har Prashad is currently a consultant in tribology and has also served as a technical advisor to Artec Instruments, USA. He retired in 2004 from the Corporate Research and Development Division of Bharat Heavy Electricals Limited, Bhel, Hyderabad, as Senior Deputy General Manager, Tribology. Until August 2011, he was an advisor to Center for Tribology Incorporated, USA. He received his M.E. Honors degree in Mechanical Engineering in 1970 and subsequently completed his Ph.D. in Tribology. He worked at the Indian Institute of Petroleum, Dehradun, and the Design Bureau of Bokaro Steel Limited in Dhanbad, Bihar, before joining Bhel in 1974. Dr. Har Prashad has published more than 125 research papers in national and international journals and has reviewed over 200 technical research papers and numerous PhD theses. Due to his various achievements, his name has been included in the Marquis Who's Who in the World and the International Directory of Distinguished Leadership, American Biographical Institute. His biography was also published in the Contemporary Who's Who, 2004 and 2012. He was honored with the Scientific Award of Excellence in 2011. For his outstanding achievements, the Tribology Society of India honored him with the Lifetime Achievement Award 2010 at the 7th International Conference on Industrial Tribology held in Ranchi on 4 December 2010. He also served as the Vice President of the Tribology Society of India and as the Honorary President of the Kriya Yoga Kendra in Hyderabad. Dr. Har Prashad is a distinguished author, researcher, and spiritual thinker. He is the author of 7 technical books and 25 books on human sciences. His books have been published in the United Kingdom, the USA, Germany, and India, and currently, all his books are available on Amazon. Dr. Har Prashad has presented around 400 Hindi and English YouTube satsang videos based on spirituality, consciousness, self-development, meditation, yoga, and various dimensions of human life. Additionally, he has published approximately 2,000 Q&A videos to address the spiritual, scientific, and practical questions of seekers. His objective is to provide guidance towards making human life more aware, balanced, and meaningful through the synthesis of a scientific perspective and spiritual experience.
Thank you.